a royal insider secretly working for the Soviets, a classic board game used to smuggle escape tools into POW camps, and classified Al-Qaeda files left behind on a public train. These are dark classified documents that the government accidentally leaked to the public. Anthony Blunt was a respected art historian, knighted by the Queen, and worked as the surveyor of the King's and later Queen's pictures. Super posh, real inner circle type, but behind all that, he was also a Soviet spy, part of the Cambridge Five, a group of British elites who secretly passed intel to the USSR during and after World War II. Blunt was recruited while still at Cambridge and fed secrets to the Soviets for years through his position in M15. The British government knew about Blunt's espionage as early as 1964. He confessed during a secret interrogation, but they cut him a deal: immunity in exchange for cooperation. Instead of facing charges, they buried it. He kept his job, he kept his title. No one said a word publicly for 15 years. The truth didn't come out until 1979 when Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher confirmed it in Parliament. And when it did come out, people were understandably pissed. Not just that this guy was a traitor, but that the government had covered it up for so long to protect reputations. The guy had access to royal archives and top-level secrets, and he was feeding it all to the Soviets right under everyone's noses. Pretty nuts. During World War II, the British government got weirdly creative with helping Allied prisoners of war escape German camps, and one of the wildest things they came up with was hiding escape tools inside Monopoly boards. And yes, I am talking about that Monopoly, the game. It sounds like an urban legend, but documents declassified in 2007 confirmed that real Monopoly sets were used as a delivery method for contraband, specifically maps, compasses, and even real money. Here's how it worked. M19, the British intelligence agency that specialized in escape and evasion, worked with the game's manufacturer to rig up these special sets. They hid silk maps between the layers of the board because silk doesn't rust or tear easily, then packed miniature compasses into game pieces and tucked real currency, depending on the prison camp's location, under the Monopoly money. These doctored games were then sent to prisons in Red Cross care packages labeled as games and pastimes, slipping right past the Germans. And once inside the camps, prisoners could discreetly open them up and plan their escape routes. This program was kept secret for decades, and the only reason we know about it now is because of these declassified documents. Now, I'd never heard of this until today, and I'm surprised I haven't. It's amazing. Again, doesn't sound like something that would actually happen in real life, but it was completely real. In 2008, a British civil servant managed to leave two incredibly sensitive documents on a train, documents relating to Al-Qaeda and Iraq's security forces. The reports contained intelligence that could have seriously jeopardized national security. What's wild is that it wasn't even some low-level staffer making a mistake, it was someone working in a very high-stakes role. If these files had fallen into the wrong hands, they could have put a lot of people in danger. Apparently, the reports were left on the train in a folder, and the civil servant didn't even notice until much later. By then, the documents were gone. The clock was ticking on trying to recover them. Thankfully, the files were eventually found, but the damage had already been done in terms of the sheer embarrassment and, potential risks. We don't know who really saw these things. If you're wondering how something like this could happen, well, it's all too easy when it comes to the sheer volume of classified info that people are dealing with on a daily level. Human error is just a thing. In December of 2015, a huge data breach exposed the personal information of almost 191 million US voters. The leak happened because a misconfigured database was left publicly accessible online. The files contained sensitive details like names, addresses, party affiliations, even some phone numbers were on there. Not cool. This was a massive amount of data. It could be used for everything from identity theft to influencing political campaigns. And what's really crazy is that it wasn't even a hacker who found this. It was just someone browsing the internet. It took a while to realize how bad the situation was, but once it did come out, people were rightfully furious. Between 1998 and 2008, the UK government lost over 1,000 laptops that contained some pretty sensitive information. They had details about national security, criminal investigations, and personal data of British citizens. Some of the missing laptops even contained details about military operations. Not good. The laptops came from various government departments, and a lot of them were were just lost or stolen without anyone noticing until it was too late. What makes this even more concerning is that the data on these laptops wasn't always encrypted. A lot of it was just sitting there exposed. Now, it's hard to imagine how something like this could happen in today's world, but back then the security just wasn't nearly as tight, obviously. Despite the massive scale of this issue, not much really came from it. There were some investigations, but the government didn't really manage to recover most of those lost laptops. Sure, they did step up their protocols later, but the whole thing highlighted just how easily things could slip through the cracks. On January 24th, 1961, a B-52 Stratofortress bomber broke up in mid-air near Goldsboro, North Carolina, while carrying two 3.8 megaton Mark 39 nuclear bombs. The pilot, Walter Scott Tullich, ordered the crew to eject at 9,000 feet. 5 of the crew members managed to eject safely, 1 didn't survive the landing, and 2 others died in the crash. When the plane went down, it dropped its nuclear payload. One of the bombs was later determined to have been extremely close to detonating. While it didn't explode, declassified documents from 2013 revealed that it was just one safety switch away from going off, and that it was, quote, credible to think that certain conditions could have triggered a nuclear blast. Now, I know what every single one of you are probably thinking. Well, we just gotta talk about the Nixon and the Vietnam peace talks sabotage, as one does. Now, this was something that didn't come to light until declassified documents dropped in 2008. So back in 1968, the US was neck deep in the Vietnam War. President Lyndon B. Johnson's administration was working hard to broker peace talks between North and South Vietnam to finally bring the war to an end. It was a big deal, and if it worked, it could have shifted the whole conflict. But while those negotiations were happening, Richard Nixon's presidential campaign was secretly working behind the scenes to blow them up. Through back channels, Nixon's team reportedly reached out to South Vietnamese officials and encouraged them to pull out of the talks. The idea was that if the peace effort failed, it would make Nixon's opponent, Vice President Hubert Humphrey, look weak and help Nixon win the election. Well, it worked. South Vietnam walked away and the talks collapsed. Nixon ended up in the White House. This wasn't confirmed until decades later, and the files were finally declassified. Now, Operation Popeye is one of these Cold War era experiments that is going to sound like a conspiracy theory, but it is 100% real, and we only know about it because of declassified military documents. The whole idea was weather warfare. And yes, I am being serious. Between 1967 and 1972, during the Vietnam War, the US military ran a top-secret program to modify the weather over Southeast Asia, particularly over the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The trail was a critical supply route used by North Vietnamese forces, and the goal was to make it a complete mess. By using cloud seeding, basically dumping silver iodide into clouds, they tried to artificially extend the monsoon season, turning roads into mud and just slowing enemy movement. The mission's motto was "Make mud, not water." Of course, the operation was highly classified. Congress didn't even know about it at first. It took a Senate investigation to finally bring the whole thing to light. Well, you may have heard of this little incident. In 2013, one of the biggest intelligence leaks in US history blew the lid off of a surveillance program that most people had no idea existed. Thanks to a massive document dumped by former NSA contractor Edward Snowden, we learned that the NSA wasn't just monitoring foreign threats, it was collecting data on millions of regular people as well. What got declassified was a program called PRISM. Through PRISM, the NSA had direct access to the servers of major tech companies like Google, Apple, Facebook, and Microsoft. Emails, video chats, photos, search histories, they had access to all of it. These companies denied it, but leaked documents made it clear that some level of cooperation had to be happening. The documents also showed that the NSA had gotten access to the main cables and systems that move internet data around the world. So this gave them access to massive amounts of traffic with very little oversight. Millions of phone records were also being collected under a different part of the program. Snowden ended up fleeing the country and was charged with espionage, but the information he released changed the conversation around digital privacy forever. All of it came straight from files the government never wanted anyone outside the intelligence community to see. And finally, we have Project Pluto, which kicked off in the late 50s when the US was deep in the arms race and looking for new ways to stay ahead of the Soviets. The basic idea was to build a cruise missile powered by a nuclear reactor. Not just nuclear armed, nuclear powered. They wanted something that could fly low and fast for basically unlimited distances, dropping off multiple nuclear warheads along the way. The missile, nicknamed SLAM, standing for Supersonic Low Altitude Missile, was designed to be unstoppable. It would fly just above the ground at supersonic speeds, weaving through radar systems, delivering nukes and causing chaos simply from the shock waves it left in its path. And because it ran on a nuclear engine, it wouldn't need to stop or refuel. It could just keep flying until it ran out of targets or melted down somewhere. Declassified documents later showed how far they got with it. They actually built and tested the engine, it worked. The project was eventually scrapped, not because it didn't function, but because the idea of a flying radioactive missile buzzing around the world with no clear landing plan started to seem a little risky. Go figure. Still, it's one of the most intense examples of how far the government was willing to go during the Cold War. With all that said, I've been your host James, and I'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video.